To each according to his faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self, within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 3, we read, "Everyone that doeth evil hath the light, neither cometh to the light, hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God." It is a common experience shared by most people that when a person errs, he experiences a desire to hide the error from his conscience instead of holding it up for purification. Error clutches its misdeeds to itself and resists correction, though it is only in the state of purity that we can achieve perfect freedom. It requires an act of will to offer that awareness up to the light and to hold it there until one's inner darkness is completely dissipated. For every state of consciousness has its own attractive power. And the more we allow that attraction to act upon us, the more we attract to ourselves the objective circumstances and experiences natural to it. Our faith is the attractive power of our underlying state of consciousness. Goodness attracts goodness. It takes goodness even to see goodness. Evil attracts evil, and it takes evil even to see evil. That is, to take special note of its existence. Whatever there is in you of darkness or light, offer it up to the heights. In the supreme light alone will we find salvation. Accept nothing less in yourself as your lasting reality. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 12th chapter, "Cling thou to me, clasp me with heart and mind, so shalt thou dwell, surely with me on high. But if thy thought droops from such height, if thou beest weak to set body and soul upon me constantly, despair not, give me lower service, seek to reach me, worshipping with steadfast will. And if thou canst not worship steadfastly, work for me, toil in works pleasing to me. For he that laboureth right for love of me shall finally attain. But if in this thy faint heart fails, bring me thy failure." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Wishing you again a beautiful Sunday, great souls, also those watching online. Isn't that quotation from the Bhagavad Gita beautiful? By Sri Krishna giving us lots of hope. Maybe it makes us feel, oh, even my failures are not so important, I can offer them. But often we don't notice. Offer me your failure. The secret is in offering. Many times in our lives, when we commit errors, when we have failures, we try to hide these things. Isn't it so? When somebody shows us our failures and mistakes, we usually don't want to hear that. We don't want anybody to know that. And we don't take fully responsibility also for our failures. And obviously, in absolute consciousness, there is no shadow, there is no darkness. Everything is wide awake. And we try to hide from the consciousness that won't hide anything. We don't want to admit, and we try to fake that we don't have any failures. Sometimes my wife and I, we travel, and my wife works with family constellation. And in those meetings, I was amazed that even for people who have perfect appearance, behind, in secret, there is a lot of embarrassing stuff like suicide, murder, abuse. How much is hidden? And my wife takes this to the surface with love to offer. You offer and become aware. The light of infinite consciousness takes everything into the light and dissolves it. Recently, I do particular work. Many of you know about that. I do sculptures of light. I work on making works in which everything dark disappears. Recently, I had to cut or chisel the quotation of Jesus, "Ask and you will be given, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you." In Aramaic, I was supposed to chisel this. This gave me the opportunity to be deeply in contact with Jesus and in his language feel what he felt. This is the principle and is our part. We need to ask the frequency with which we ask. On that frequency we receive. We have to knock on the door. As we call, so we receive. This is very important to understand this universal principle. The law of attraction. Whatever happens in our lives manifests. Comes to mind a story of Yogananda's. Somebody who talked about Yogananda. When Yogananda gave his talks, many people came to him, standing in line to greet him, to receive a blessing from him. Sometimes Yogananda said a few words. There was a long line. There was one man, a young man. He was a little bit passive in the left hand reached out to him. And Yogananda reached out his weak left hand. And the next person came with a smile and reached out his right hand. And Yogananda replied. But the other man went back to the line again with this gesture, with this passive gesture, wanted to have Yogananda's blessing. He received again that weak blessing. As we turn towards God, that's how God and also the world and nature respond to us. The great masters tell us that we are all great souls, and I greeted you at the beginning like that, as an affirmation of truth. Recently, I heard of a disciple of Yogananda's that I had never heard of before. He was very hidden among all the other disciples. He was not very public. His name was Dr. George. He lived in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, or near Milwaukee, kind of in the northern central Midwest of the United States. And when Dr. George met Yogananda, he saw this man looking Indian with a turban, and Yogananda fixated him with his gaze and said to Dr. George, and he tapped with his walking stick on his heart center and said, "George, you have to come to my talk tonight." And Yogananda walked on his way. But after a few steps, Dr. George understood what he was talking about it, because he saw a billboard advertising the conference of Yogananda's. So he went there and he became a very serious disciple, a very evolved disciple. He was able to enter into samadhi. He worked many miracles. What is so beautiful, that this man was very eccentric. There was another disciple who came to visit him, and he thought, this poor guy, he was completely disheveled. His house was just ramshackle, chaotic, dirty. But Dr. George invited this man to sleep in his bed, whereas Dr. George would sleep in another bed. And this man had a cosmic, mystic experience. While he tried to sleep in that bed, he couldn't sleep. He was in ecstasy. He had a divine experience. This Dr. George couldn't even speak very well, because he lived in silence. He was always meditating. He didn't care about outer appearances. So there are many types of disciples. There were many different disciples of Yogananda's. Some of them, in their character, in their ways, they were almost opposite. And yet they were all great souls. How can we be in touch with this divine frequency? How can we offer ourselves into this higher state of which the Bhagavad Gita speaks? Lahiri Moshe, who was the great avatar of yoga, in a very sublime way, taught the method and mechanism of the inner life, how we work on a subtler level. And this is the great lack of modern science. They lack the instruments to live well inwardly. how to live well, how do we work. Not just the physical existence, but much more the emotional, energetical, mental, psychological and spiritual aspect of our lives. We don't pay attention to that enough. Nobody teaches us how to work well with these inner mechanisms. This is not taught in the schools. It's not taught by the parents to the children. It's not transmitted through the media. That's why the great masters come, to show us this inner technology of liberation. Lahiri Moshe explained it very simply, clearly. How we are manifested in our being in this world. There is a part beyond our head, above our head, a state without movement, without frequency, the silent state. There is absolute stillness and consciousness, and from that area emanates through our spiritual eye a vibration from 1 to 10 to the throat chakra, from 10 to 100 to the heart chakra, from 100 to 1,000 to the third chakra, from 1,000 to 10,000, and from all the way down to a million of frequency. So each chakra is 10 times more gross, more quick. And we communicate through these frequencies, through the chakras. As we vibrate, the world will respond absolutely, 100%, according to our vibration, according to our way to think, our way to calm our thoughts. In Italy we speak about we're twisting, turning in many different things, and we have lost our center, the work that we have to do. As Jyotish said once, he gave the image of a room that has above a great ventilator, as they have of them in India, also here in Italy. The ventilator at the ceiling is still, and underneath it there is a table full with a pile of feathers. And if the ventilator is still, the feathers stay. But if the ventilator spins, then we're enveloped of flying feathers and we cannot see anything. But the slower the ventilator goes, the more the feathers lay down on the table, on the floor, and the air becomes clear. And there is ever more silence, ever less movement. And when the ventilator is still, everything settles down. And only then do we have clarity. Inwardly, we have to do this work to switch off that, damn it, ventilator. So you have to switch off with a telecommando. You have to press the right button to switch it off. These are the yoga techniques like Kriya. The technology to quieten the inner ventilator, that it becomes still. And when it's ever more still, we might think that's boring when there's nothing happening. when there is no intensity, but the opposite is true. The quieter we become, truly quiet inwardly, it's not physically, inwardly, the more intense becomes life. We perceive the energies of joy and pleasure. We can enjoy everything with more clarity. We see everything more clearly. There is no interference. We can discern what is right and what is wrong because we see clearly. And everything works much better when we can stop these spinning ventilators. We have to do that work. Nobody does that for us. We have to apply our will to stop that oscillator or that ventilator until we are completely, absolutely still. I would like to tell you a story about Yogananda. He, as a little boy, had always asked. He knew how to ask everything, how to seek, how to knock on the door. And also we should be less shy. We have the right of birth to ask for what we need, which is above all bliss, incomparable joy, what words cannot even express, this state of ecstasy that is our birthright. We all can reach that state. That state is waiting for us, but we have to ask for it. We have to knock on the door, knock, 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 until that door finally opens. Yogananda was like that. He was a little boy, maybe a young boy, like 12 years. Yogananda wanted to only find God. He wanted the infinite consciousness. He spoke with a friend of his, if this night, if we ask totally with our faith, Krishna will come to meditation. In India, they all love Krishna, a form of God. The other one said, well, I don't know whether he really comes. I'm not so far or pure. We all know this. We think we are not worth. But Yogananda says, if we pray continuously tonight, Krishna will come. And so they sat together, they meditated, they did pranayams, they meditated and meditated with all their concentration. At some point, the friend wanted to give up. He wanted to go home. Maybe it's all wrong. Krishna isn't hearing us anyway. Yogananda said, don't give up, and continued with concentration. And suddenly, Krishna revealed himself in beautiful light and bliss, the form of God, Krishna. And the other one said, I don't see it. Yogananda touched his heart and transmitted that vision also to his friend. So they both saw Krishna. So we need that determination on the spiritual path to keep knocking, to ask. In a similar story of Yogananda's, he was a rascal sometimes, in a lovable way. Many of us have visited his childhood home in 4 Garpa Road in Calcutta, where his family and still his descendants live. And he would meditate in the attic room, the top floor. he would meditate there sometimes for days and days. And many in that house, the uncles, aunts, the servants, they criticized him. This attitude of his that he would withdraw from family life, he wouldn't do his house duties, he wouldn't eat enough, he would get ill. He was also very skinny as a little boy. He would neglect his family. And on the other hand, he invited all his friends to eat with them at dinner, and then his father had to pay more, of course, for the food. Especially one auntie who lived in that house was always criticizing him for his bad behavior. And once he meditated for a long time and then came late for dinner to the family table or the family room. He was very inward. He didn't speak with anyone. He stayed in silence. And this auntie again nagged and criticized him. "Ah, you always meditate, but you don't do what you have to do for the school, for the family. You're misbehaving, rascal." She criticized him in front of everyone. And the little brother, Sananda, who told us this story, he said he saw in the little boy, his name was Mukunda, a gleam, a light. He knew what he was doing and he had a plan. He had a trick up his sleeve. The auntie continued to nag and nag and nag. Suddenly, Yogananda fell backwards onto his back, didn't move himself. They had to call a doctor. They checked his pulse, there was no pulse, there was no breath. The doctor said, "I'm so sorry, but this boy is dead." You can imagine the family wailing, especially the auntie. She was crying, "If he had only eaten enough, if he only had behaved. But if he comes back to life, I will not criticize him anymore." At that moment, little Yogananda got up and said, "Okay, from now on you don't criticize me anymore." The auntie picked up a stick and hit him on the head. But she didn't criticize him anymore. In this state of samadhi, it can happen that the breath and the heart stop. It can even happen involuntarily in that state, that the bodily functions stop completely. In this little book, Mejda, by his little brother Sananda, there are many stories about him. His younger brother said that Yogananda often spoke to a brother who later became Satyananda, a relative at least. Yogananda said to this man, who then was a little boy, "No, you're too little." But eventually, this boy came to his room when he was about 16 years old. And Yogananda began to meditate with him. It explained also the yogi takes his energy inward, withdraws from the senses and from the body, and takes the energy and awareness up. Through his devotion, he takes all his awareness up to offer it into the infinite, and he can stop all bodily functions, and instead lives in a state of oneness with everything. He sat down, meditated, and stopped the breath and stopped the heart with his inner state. he was completely still, in ecstasy. There was no oscillation. The ventilator was still. And the infinite ocean of infinite consciousness revealed itself, himself, herself, to him. And this younger man, young boy, said, after 2 hours, what should I do? For 2 hours this guy hasn't moved. And they started chanting Om into his ear to make sure they massaged his body. And slowly, young Yogananda came back to normal, so-called normal, everyday consciousness. His body started to shake. And Mukunda, young Yogananda, was a little bit embarrassed that his younger brother and also his father, who had come to help, had seen this state of his. But the father just went out pretending he hadn't seen anything. This is an example for all of us. We have to take away anything that is compulsive. To reach the inner compulsion, this tendency. But inwardly, we have a compulsion to just be with God. All the other compulsions are our reactions toward outer things, to emotional turmoil. And rather than that, we have to take the reins of our lives into our hands and understand where all these attitudes come from and go back to the source, offering ourselves, offering everything that is within us into the inner light. Whatever impulse or compulsion we have. And we become ever quieter. As long as we cannot control our energy and consciousness, we will be distracted by it. Our mind will go outward. You know how difficult it is to meditate. It's difficult to detach from all that and go beyond all this restlessness and switch off the ventilator. It often happens that it takes a long time for it to quieten down. It's not easy. The key, as the Bhagavad Gita says, is offer me. Offer me everything. Every limitation. Every moment. Whatever happens. Give it. Whatever happens. Upward. Every thought, every reaction. When we have made mistakes, when we have made a mess of anything, just offer everything. Offer yourself. Also, what I see right now, it's not mine, it's yours. Everything I experience is yours. Everything I did wrong is yours. Until gradually, everything is God's. Like in the structure of light, where I chiseled the quotation of Jesus. Behind is the light that shines through it, shines through the words of Jesus. The more you take it away, give it away, the more the light can come through. Because really we are all great souls.
Quando mi sveglio per salutare il sole, quando esco nella città, nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Quando rido e quando piango, nei malintesi e nell'amor, nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel lavoro e nel riposo, nella gioia e nel dolore, nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Dio, sono tuo per l'eternità. Dio, tuo per l'eternità. Sono tuo per l'eternità. Dio, tuo per l'eternità. Dio, sono tuo per l'eternità. Tuo per l'eternità. Dio, sono tuo per l'eternità. Dio,